Welcome in, ladies and gentlemen, to another edition of All Access AM. I am Billy Embody. Happy Wednesday to all of you out there. Happy college football playoff rankings release. Boy, do we have a lot to get to on the show as we'll let you all file in, watching on Twitter, watching on YouTube, watching on Instagram. We appreciate you guys for stopping in with us. And cool new feature if you are watching on Instagram, or there are some parts of YouTube that offer you the more vertical view. You get that now. So shout out to our StreamYard platform for taking care of us with that regard. So we are down in Miami, and Miami was a big storyline for the college football playoff rankings. We'll talk about that. We'll be joined at the end of the show at 8:40 a.m. Eastern time by Nathan Breisinger of Pittsburgh Sports Now, covering Pitt, of course, and previewing that Notre Dame matchup for the Panthers this weekend in Pittsburgh. Huge college football playoff implications there, as well as ACC respect level implications there. It's a non-conference game, but it's a huge matchup for Pitt going into this weekend and looking to keep their momentum. We'll talk about that, but do want to get going with the college football playoff rankings. But before we do want to remind you guys that we are brought to you by our friends at OPW Solutions. OPW Solutions is where you can get all the latest and greatest technology as far as how to support your business from a commercial landscaping and parking lot management and fence management and all of those things management. Our friends at OPW Solutions can certainly help you out with all of that every day that you need them to be there to support you. Reach out to them. You have their number here on the screen if you're watching on YouTube or wherever you're catching us at, 214-444-2305 or info@opwsolutions.com. They're in North Texas, they're in Oklahoma, they're in Arkansas, and they're expanding their reach in 2026. So we really appreciate them sponsoring our Wednesday show as we get going on All Access AM. I'm Billy Embody. Thanks for joining us. College football playoff rankings came out Tuesday night, and again, Mack Rhoades, the college football playoff committee chair, said something that is just out of this world with how you look at the ACC teams. And I'll get to that in a moment, so stay right there. But when we look at the overall playoff rankings, we can break them down right now. Number one is Ohio State. I'll run through them here for you guys, so you guys know if you're waking up, if you're enjoying your coffee, and you haven't had a chance to look just yet, you can get a feel for where these rankings are. Number one, Ohio State. Number two, Indiana. Number three, Texas A&M. Number four, Alabama. Number five, Georgia. Six, Texas Tech. Seven, Ole Miss. 8, Oregon. 9, Notre Dame. 10, Texas. 11, Oklahoma. 12, BYU. 13, Utah. 14, Vanderbilt. Here's the highest ranked ACC team. Wait for it. It is Miami at number 15. Georgia Tech at 16. USC 17. I watched them play Saturday night in an impressive win. 18, Michigan. Virginia 19. Louisville 20. 21st, Iowa 22. Pitt 23. Tennessee 24. USF and 25, Cincinnati. So we'll leave those up there for you guys for a moment as we break this down for you on All Access AM. Please, though, hit the subscribe button for us. Do us a favor and go ahead and hit that for us so that you can be locked in with us when we go live Monday, Wednesday, Thursday, 7 to 8 a.m. Central Time, 8 to 9 a.m. Eastern Time. We appreciate you guys. We'll have some basketball talk with Jamie Shaw on the show on Thursday, as we'll dish out some picks as well. But these college football playoff rankings, I don't generally have a problem with this group of teams and where they're ranked. I have a problem with some of the discussion around the ACC and particularly Georgia Tech. Here's what Mack Rhoades said earlier on Thursday. Here's what he said. He was asked about the ACC and Georgia Tech and Miami jumping ahead of Georgia Tech. Okay, Miami took care of business against Syracuse 38-10. Georgia Tech idle. All they did was prepare for Boston College and lick their wounds after that loss to NC State. And here's the quote. Georgia Tech was idle. Obviously, their last game, they certainly didn't play well on either side of the ball when you think about their loss to North Carolina State. What are we doing here? Haynes King had over 500 yards by himself, by his lonesome, against NC State. Was it a great game defensively for Georgia Tech? Absolutely not. CJ Bailey cooked. They did it without Hollywood Smothers, which is another indictment on that defense. But don't give me the didn't play well on either side of the ball. Haynes King continued to produce, continued to put his team in position to win. And it's a silly discussion point that I'm shocked is still at this same point it was a week ago when he said it the first time. I don't know what people want to see from Georgia Tech offensively. I think there's a perception around Georgia Tech because of Haynes King being this gritty East Texas son of a coach quarterback that they grind it out every game. They don't deliver the explosive plays. They don't deliver offensively in general. They just get it done. But Haynes King is one of the best quarterbacks in the country and is playing like it pretty much every week. Are there plays he'd like back against NC State? Sure, absolutely. But when you're talking about what went wrong for Georgia Tech, you've got to start with the defense. And you're going to have opportunities for Georgia Tech to prove itself over these next final 3 games. Obviously, they face BC this weekend. They should be able to take care of a BC offense that really can't move the ball. They don't know who their quarterback should be. They've shuffled them in and out. There's a lot going on there. You'd like to see Georgia Tech go up to Chestnut Hill this weekend and do what SMU did to BC, which is completely control that game. Then they have an opportunity against Pitt the next week to defend a talented quarterback in Mason Heinschel. More on him, obviously, at 8:40 with our friend Nathan Breisinger and his rise. But then you finish up with Georgia. So the defense has to get its house in order. But maybe this ends up being the Haynes King show that has to carry them all the way to not only Charlotte, but the college football playoff. And it's been the Haynes King show. He's been the one to carry the rock. He's been the one to carry the load offensively. And he's done it consistently week in, week out for the most part. So it's such a weird talking point here for Georgia Tech's loss to be viewed that way. They played a bad game defensively. And teams win together, they lose together, but don't. It's so strange that after last week, somebody didn't whisper in his ear and said, "Hey man, hey Mac, knock knock. Did you see the way Haynes King played last week?" I don't understand it. I don't understand it. So sorry for that rant to open the show around Georgia Tech and their loss now coming up on 2 full weeks ago. But it's such a strange ordeal to go through some of the talking points with this college football playoff chair and committee and why they view certain teams the way they do. Miami jumps ahead of Georgia Tech at 15, sitting in position now to tee up what we know could happen if the SEC doesn't cannibalize itself. Because if the SEC doesn't cannibalize itself, you will have Texas, Oklahoma dropping in all likelihood. Let's say the top 7 teams stay as they are, right? Alabama wins out. I guess Alabama, there's probably a couple games in there with that top 7 that they do play each other. I think Alabama and maybe, let's see, Texas A&M might play each other. I could be completely off on that. No, they play Oklahoma and, of course, Eastern Illinois, sandwiched between Oklahoma and Auburn. So 10 and 11, Texas and Oklahoma. This is where I was going and had this right. Let's say Texas and Oklahoma lose SEC games or one SEC game each over the final few weeks here. Let's say Texas A&M beats Texas. Say Alabama beats Oklahoma this weekend. All of those things put this conference in position to have the top 7 stay where they are. You'd see Miami slide up, I would imagine. You'd see Georgia Tech, if they win out, slide up eventually. Those are all really important pieces to solving this college football playoff puzzle and figuring out if if the ACC has a shot, not only at getting one team in, but getting two teams in. I think the ACC ends up getting two teams in. The Miami move up solidifies that. If Miami wins out, let's think about Georgia Tech and Miami. Let's say Georgia Tech and Miami win out. And I don't know if that leads them to Charlotte. I think it leads Georgia Tech for sure to Charlotte. But let's say Miami doesn't end up in Charlotte. They should end up being in a strong position to make the college football playoff. They'll have an opportunity to do it. Because number 11, Miami, right now in the seeding, would face Texas Tech. Number 12 would be USF. Number 10, currently, in the seeding of the college football playoff, if it were to happen, would be Texas right now. Oklahoma would be the team left out. If Texas loses another game, because again, this isn't about predicting, this is about what would happen right now if the season ended today. You could have Miami continue to slide up. You could have Georgia Tech, if they win the ACC, continue to slide up. And the good thing for the ACC and what this college football playoff committee showed this weekend, or excuse me, this week, in my opinion, is that they are going to try to get two ACC teams in if the ACC doesn't cannibalize itself. That's the important thing here. And you have Miami and Georgia Tech as the two that are poised to do this. Yeah, Texas does. I'm not talking about for Sandra Wells. I'm not talking about Texas playing Texas A&M this weekend. I'm talking about Texas A&M taking care of business against Texas at the end of the season. The idea is that if you have these SEC teams that are in the top 7, Ole Miss, Alabama, Georgia, Texas A&M, if they hold serve and they win out, you're going to see Texas lose a game. You're going to see Oklahoma lose another game, and that would push them out of this top seeding group in the college football playoff. We'll see, though, because you have one slot that the college football playoff committee has at least reserved right now for the top team in the ACC. And if that happens, you're going to see Miami get in. And if Georgia Tech wins the ACC, but you still have had Miami ahead of Georgia Tech, and Miami wouldn't play in the ACC championship, there's a shot Georgia Tech with a ACC championship win could move ahead of Miami in the standings, and you could argue that they would deserve that at that point, especially if they beat Georgia. But Georgia wouldn't slide out of the top 7, in my opinion, losing to Georgia Tech, who at that point would be a top 12 type of team. So there's a little bit of movement here, but there's a world where the college football playoff committee, by this ranking, set up the ACC that if they take care of business with their top teams, they can have 2 in. Now, the problem with the ACC is they haven't had that ability to take care of business with their top teams. They've been beating each other. They've been seeing those upsets with Cal and Louisville, getting into it in overtime, and Cal coming out on top. You really have these programs that can't get it done in the big moments. Chandler Morris loses to Virginia loses Chandler Morris to injury, and they can't overcome that against Wake Forest. Now, I'm of the belief that Virginia needed to overcome that no matter what against a poor, in my opinion, Wake Forest team that has benefited from a soft schedule. And Virginia has benefited from a soft schedule too. But if Virginia is a college football playoff team, shout out Kelly Gramlich for making this point earlier this week, and Eric McLean on their show. But if they're a college football playoff team, you should be able to overcome that against Wake Forest, who's still building their program and just getting off the ground. Had a text message come into the show that said it might be for Miami's benefit to not go to the ACC championship. Absolutely. That's a huge argument there, and it'd be a benefit for the ACC as well if they win out. If you think about what they have in front of them too, they'd have a Pitt team that could be in the top 20 when they play them. They could be in the top 15 if they were able to beat Georgia Tech next week. But if Georgia Tech wins out and goes to the ACC championship, wins it, that and Miami being left at home would be a positive for the ACC as far as getting 2 teams in. And we'll see what happens if Georgia Tech wins out, goes to the ACC championship, loses. The precedent, at least, has kind of been said. If you play for a championship, you should probably be in, unless you're Duke, in my opinion. But if you have taken care of business throughout your season, like Georgia Tech could over these next few weeks, they'll have a chance to be in the college football playoff without even winning the ACC, but playing for that championship. You look at the two teams that are sitting at 19 and 20 to close out the top 20 teams in the college football playoff committee's rankings. 19 Virginia, 20 Louisville. With Virginia at 19 and Louisville at 20, these two rankings are telling me that one, the committee doesn't necessarily value the fact that both teams were without two top players in their losses. And the reason why I say that is because, yes, they lost, they should have slid down, but where they were before these losses at 14 and 15 last week suggests to me, hey, we see them, we respect them, we think that they have the chance to represent the ACC. But seeing them slide as far back as they did, I was kind of thinking if you're saying that before last week, these two teams were better than USC, Michigan, programs like that, and because one didn't have a starting quarterback, because one didn't have their star running back, you slide them back in close, narrow losses. Little suspect for me. I'm of the opinion that Virginia has not really given me much faith if I'm an ACC fan or if I'm a college football playoff committee member that they're going to go far in a college football playoff if they take care of business and do that. I just don't know if that roster is built for that. I really don't. But that's more of an eye test. That's not a backed by analytics. That's by me watching Virginia, seeing them play with fire week after week after week. Louisville, on the other hand, has a top win. They have the Miami win. Now they have that overtime loss to Cal, and they have some a close, narrow loss to another top 20 team with Virginia. So a difficult thing to overcome with their two losses now, and they've kind of set themselves up certainly way behind the eight ball here. But they do play SMU next week. They play Clemson this weekend. Huge matchup for them to kind of maybe settle the waters from a perception standpoint, even without Isaac Brown, that they can make things happen. By the way, Jeff Brom asked about Miller Moss this week, and he backed him up. And he was able to say, hey, look, this is my guy. We're going to continue to ride with Miller Moss. But he is certainly starting to feel not any sort of heat. Remember, Jeff Brom has been talked about as a guy who some programs out there with coaching changes, Florida in particular, might look at. And he's a really, really solid coach. I think with better resources, he could do wonders somewhere because he can win the big game. He can really energize a program with his offensive prowess to call plays and develop quarterbacks who really have been through it. You look at Tyler Shook and what he did last year, and now Miller Moss hasn't really hit that level of development. But Tyler Shook, what he was able to do last year was just awesome. And Louisville has great talent. But here's what Jeff Brom said about Miller Moss. Well, we believe in Miller and we believe in all our quarterbacks. We'll always have a plan ready for all of them at some point in different aspects, which we've done before. At the same time, he's got to continue to work through these things and be as effective as we can. Without question, there's always a plan to help us win. So we'll have that ready to go. So he backed him up, but he also left the door open that if he has the type of game that he had this past week against Cal, there's probably opportunity for Louisville to maybe get some other guys opportunities in this game. So in these games to come, Clemson, SMU, and then they finish up with Kentucky. So Louisville will have a chance to get an SEC win, albeit against a Kentucky team that isn't too great overall, but they'd have an opportunity to get that done. So that kind of wraps up the top 20. Here's a team that, again, because they're on a bye, I don't think got the same benefit of the doubt that maybe a Georgia Tech did. But Pittsburgh, 22, they move up a couple slots, just being idle, just hanging out, just getting ready for the biggest 3-game stretch in probably a decade for Pitt, as far as ranked teams and what you have in front of you. But this is a really, really good Pitt offense. I obviously believe they'll be tested heavily by Notre Dame this weekend. They'll have to defend Jeremiah Love. They'll have to have an answer for the efficiency of CJ Carr and what Notre Dame's been able to do. But Notre Dame, look, this is a Notre Dame team that was tested by Boston College just 2 weeks ago now. BC really had them, I mean, I would say on the ropes. There were some Notre Dame fans that appreciate you watching or appreciate you following on Twitter, but that got into my comments or replies and said, what are you talking about? They didn't have them on the ropes. Yes, they did. They were driving to tie the game in a one-possession game, and they throw an interception, which is, again, classic kind of BC offense. That's why Georgia Tech needs to take care of them this weekend the way SMU did last weekend. And they throw an interception, and then Jeremiah Love rips off a 94-yard run to ice the game and make it seem like a solid win over BC. BC has one win on the year, one win. And I know Bill O'Brien and his staff are really, really just struggling for answers, and they're beat up along the defensive fronts. They were able to bottle up Jeremiah Love pretty well before that. So a really interesting conversation among the committee, I think, next week, if Pitt is able to get this win over Notre Dame, would be, well, how high do they deserve to go? Because to tie it all back together, Mac Rhodes said this in terms of Miami jumping Georgia Tech. Georgia Tech, again, we look at all the metrics. Their strength schedule is hard for them when you think about just any non-conference signature wins. Miami certainly, with the win versus Notre Dame, was a key factor for Miami being ahead of Georgia Tech. Again, just in general with the ACC, I just think their lack of non-conference signature wins, other than Miami over Notre Dame. Of course, Florida State blew their opportunity to really be able to tout their win over Alabama earlier this year. And the committee, Mac Rhodes admitted as well, when looking at Notre Dame, they've won 7 straight. They have those early season losses. They've confirmed that if Notre Dame wins out, obviously they're going to the college football playoff, and they should. But they've already confirmed it so far in advance that you wonder, would they even sneak them in with 3 losses? Like, if they lose to a top 25 Pitt team, does Notre Dame then take that spot maybe of like an Oklahoma? Do they slide in there? Do they have that chance to then stick around and hang around? Because I don't think they should. If they lose in the month of November, it just shows me exactly what a lot of people are probably going to be saying about this Notre Dame football team. They lost their 2 toughest games of the year. Yes, they lost them close, and they lost them on the road at Miami and then at home against Texas A&M. But then they played Purdue, Arkansas, Boise State, NC State, USC at home. Boston College on the road has been Notre Dame's toughest game to date this season as far as on the field play. Toughest game to overcome. And then they took care of business against Navy in impressive fashion. Now they finish with Pitt, who's in the top 25. Syracuse, horrible. If Notre Dame messes around with if Notre Dame messes around with Syracuse, they should drop a spot to begin with. That Syracuse offense can't do anything. They can't move the ball. It should be something like we saw earlier this year against Arkansas, 56-13. That's what you want to see from Notre Dame. I think we will, by the way. And then they go on the road at Stanford to finish things out. Stanford, kind of pesky football team for some teams this year, despite being kind of a really, really struggling football program right now as they're trying to build back up with their interim coach and Frank Reich and Andrew Luck out there. But Notre Dame, they have an opportunity to kind of cement their status here this weekend with a win at Pitt. But Pitt, how high do you move them up? Because if you look at the way Miami's played as of late, they have obviously lost to Louisville. They've lost to SMU. They've taken care of the cupcakes that they've had in between. Now Miami gets a chance to obviously cement their status over the next few weeks. They've got NC State, who is an upset, a giant killer, so to speak, or a college football playoff killer, beating Virginia and beating Georgia Tech in a sense. Then they take on Virginia Tech. Then they finish with Pitt, I believe. Yes, on the road at Pitt to wind down their regular season. Say Miami wins out. Okay, that takes care of the argument between Miami and Pitt in the future. That's fine. if Pitt beats Miami, obviously they'll have the head-to-head at the end of the season. But Pittsburgh, will they jump past Miami if they can get this win this weekend over Notre Dame? That would be one heck of an argument for the committee to have to wrestle with, because Pittsburgh, with their starting quarterback, Mason Heinschel, is undefeated. They made a change, and they look like a totally different football team. They've not scored less than 30 points with Mason Heinschel at the helm. So they have some things that they have going for themselves with regards to the early season and how they lost and now have bounced back. Meanwhile, Notre Dame, new quarterback CJ Carr, but he was their starter. He was the one that led them onto the field against Miami, against Texas A&M, and they lost both those games. So really interesting discussion, I think, around those teams and kind of how we'll look at this whole playoff rankings next week. I think the ACC, when you look at the Week 12 slate, is starting to look like one where we could get some answers for some of these teams and kind of where things are going to go this coming week with the league. Because you do have, obviously, the Pitt Notre Dame game is massive. Again, we're going to preview that in about 10 minutes with Nathan Breisinger of Pittsburgh Sports Now. So stick around for that if you're a Pitt fan for sure. NC State heads to Miami. Can they work some magic? Georgia Tech at Boston College should be pretty calm game. But then Virginia on the road at Duke this weekend. A massive game. Virginia could be without Chandler Morris. There's hope that as of today that Chandler Morris will practice. We'll see kind of what the reports are out of Charlottesville on Chandler Morris's status. But he's not for sure going to play this weekend at Duke. Which, if he doesn't, that is quite the I don't want to say death blow, but I just feel like they'd really have a struggle to win that game at Duke. I think most would agree, but they do have a fighting chance with Chandler Morris if he's able to play. So that'll be something to watch very closely because, Virginia just, you could tell when they didn't have Chandler Morris, and even it was a struggle against Wake Forest early. They've not been able to move the ball without Chandler Morris in there. So that's a key game this weekend. And then you have North Carolina at Wake Forest. You have Virginia Tech at Florida State. This is a pretty calm weekend. SMU's idle as well. And it all starts Clemson, Louisville, Friday night, ESPN, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time game. Really looking forward to watching that one. Louisville, I feel like, has an opportunity here to really show that they are a playoff caliber team. They have two close losses, both their losses in overtime this year. How can they make a statement against a Clemson team that is down bad? Clemson is coming off a nice win over Florida State. They controlled the game. They were able to have some fun with it and get a big win at Death Valley to kind of close out the ACC slate of games there for their seniors and kind of put that emphasis on their night game there in Death Valley. So are they going to show that they can finish strong, or are they going to show that things might not finish well for Clemson, regardless of what they've done in the past? So really interested to see what happens with that Friday night game. Let's get to some of our picks for this weekend. I want to dish out the Louisville Clemson pick for you guys for this game. Again, 7:30 p.m. Eastern time, Friday night. Louisville takes on Clemson on ESPN. Louisville favored by 3 points here. I am not a Miller Moss believer. I wasn't before this season. I said it to whoever would ask me. I said, I can't believe Louisville has bet its chips on Miller Moss. And he's a great kid, had good interactions with him when he was a recruit. But after what I saw at USC, I was surprised that Jeff Brom handpicked this guy to lead his program this year. And now we're in November watching Louisville struggle offensively without Isaac Brown back there. And we saw that struggle at times early this season. Louisville -3.5, though, is the pick for me. I just think Clemson doesn't necessarily have it in them to go on the road and win this game in a night game at Louisville. I think Jeff Brom, this is the type of game that he gets up for, his team gets up for, they'll respond. I think they were in a bad spot with Cal coming to town. They've kind of spent a lot of emotional capital lately, and they needed to kind of maybe have a wake-up call, but they didn't need to lose that game and really spoil what was a really nice story coming together for the ACC of Louisville and what they could be for this college football playoff rankings. So Louisville is my pick, -3. I think they get the win, and I would take them to cover that as well. I like what Louisville is doing against Clemson this weekend. I think Jeff Brom is going to prove to everybody that, hey, that was not a great game for Miller Moss. That was a game that you score 23 points in regulation, and yeah, they're going to bounce back against Clemson. I think that Clemson defense, their secondary hasn't been that good. I think that was a good matchup for Clemson versus Florida State. Looking back on it, Tommy Castellanos is a dynamic player at times, but not a outstanding player in the passing game of sorts. So I'm going to go ahead and pick Clemson to fall to Louisville this weekend and kind of really put themselves behind the 8 ball as far as making a bowl game. We'll see how this pick obviously stands up, but I like Louisville at home here to bounce back. I don't think they lose 2 straight at home, and they get back on the right side of things. You look at the rest of this weekend slate, kind of a slate that will really kind of make you fall asleep in a way outside of Notre Dame Pitt. But that was how we felt about last week's slate in week 11 for the ACC before all the chaos happened. I do want to pick NC State Miami and preview this one. NC State Miami is an intriguing one for this weekend. You've got NC State as a 14.5-point underdogs on the road. This kind of feels like the Louisville game in a sense. You've got a team that has some weapons. You've got a team that has some ability to be a giant killer. Dave Dorian has really kind of calmed the waters around his future in a sense, but they still have to finish here. You know, they still have a slate that doesn't necessarily guarantee that they will be bowling, but they have the chance to if they take care of business. They're 5-4 right now. They head on the road to Miami, then they play Florida State at home, and then they play UNC at home as well. So very, very manageable final 2 games. But this one against Miami is the one that I really have circled as far as could this one significantly impact how the rest of their season goes as a whole. If they lose to Miami on the road, obviously it's what everybody expects, right? It is a 14.5-point line for NC State. They're not being given much respect. Miami has taken care of business, against some of the lesser teams. But this NC State team has some talent. Does it show up in Coral Gables this weekend? We'll find out, obviously. But when you look at NC State, they do have, I think, some of that ability with CJ Bailey running the show to get the ball out and really make it difficult on these Miami defenders. And CJ Bailey does have some of that ability to move around and kind of make plays. And he might go down there back in his hometown and have the game of his life. That's really a question that I have is that underrated piece for CJ Bailey going back to his hometown. Can he have the game of his life? Hollywood Smothers, we'll see if they have him this weekend in this one, but he really, really would be such a huge piece for NC State this weekend. But Miami, I think they've had enough wake-up calls. I do think they take care of business. I've got Miami covering this one. Again, 14.5 points is a lot, but I think they can get it done and continue their march on as far as improving their college football playoff resume. All right, let's end with this. We're giving out a couple picks here. We are going to talk on Thursday's show with Jamie Shaw of On3 Sports, on3andrivals.com, breaking down the basketball side of this league. We're going to spend some time doing that. We'll preview the rest of the games for the league as well. But let's have a spotlight here on Louisville taking care of business against a top 10 Kentucky team last night. 96-88. Big game for Pat Kelsey and this Louisville program to take care of business against the Wildcats. You've got to give them a lot of credit. Denzel Aberdeen was awesome for Kentucky, but it was just too much Louisville, and they were able to get the win over Kentucky. Got to give Louisville a lot of credit for what they put together in this one. I did not get a chance to watch it, but Michael Brown Jr., Ryan Conwell, both had 20-plus points, with Michael Brown Jr. scoring 29 in this game to lead all scorers. Really nice win there for Pat Kelsey and that Louisville team. I think you've got to see them now as a top 10 team. You got to see them as a team that most people are picking to maybe unseat Duke there as at the top of the ACC. Louisville certainly had a ton of buzz going into this season around what this Cardinals team could look like, and I think they're showing in the early going why. And they just got Kayshawn Pryor back. Big opportunity for them to take that next step. Kayshawn Pryor, for those wondering, only had 2 minutes of action, but he grabbed 2 boards. He did not score, but he's still working his way back in. I think Louisville is they're playing really a style that is fun for these players to play in. And I think that's where so much of their confidence comes from. I think that's why they were able to go and get this win at home at the Yum Center. Great win for this conference. And look at the ACC in basketball early on this year in non-conference play. They've been able to take care of that business, and it's been such a big deal for them to do that. So you've got to give them credit, and allowing this group of teams to step up in non-conference play, and we'll see kind of how the rest of the weekend and this non-conference slate goes. But for those of you guys who are watching us, we appreciate you guys. Please hit that subscribe button for us. If you're watching on our YouTube channel, hit the subscribe button on All Access AM YouTube. Please, that is a huge help to us, and we'd love to continue to grow our subscriber base here. And we appreciate all of you ACC fans for getting out and subscribing to the channel. For ACC basketball tonight, pretty quiet slate. St. Joseph's at Virginia Tech, UNC Greensboro at NC State, Montana State at Stanford. Thursday night, Pitt at West Virginia. Quite the week for Pitt. You'll hear Nathan Breisinger, I think, or maybe it was when we were chatting off air, but he's headed down there, of course, right after Pat Narduzzi's last press conference for Pitt at West Virginia. What a obviously rivalry game. And then Cal at Kansas State Thursday night. So a good little slate to kick off the weekend for you guys. And then Friday, Georgia Tech at Georgia, a good rivalry matchup there on the hardwood, of course, for that one. So lots to get to on the rest of the show with Nathan Breisinger. So I got the chance to chat with him yesterday. So this is a recording, but excited to share this with you guys as he previews this matchup between the Pitt Panthers and Notre Dame for us. Really appreciate his time with us, and we will catch you guys on the next edition of All Access AM. And again, appreciate Nathan for joining us on the show. So we'll catch you next time. But here it is, Nathan Breisinger of Pittsburgh Sports Now, chatting with us on All Access AM. Really excited to be joined by our next guest on All Access AM, Nathan Breisinger of Pittsburgh Sports Now. Nathan, thanks so much for the time. We appreciate it. I know it's a huge week for Pitt, taking on Notre Dame, College game day, ACC huddle, everything going on around this program right now, centered around the Panthers and the Irish getting together on the football field. What is the atmosphere in town right now? Just is the whole city coming out for this one?
It sounds like it, especially, the Pitt faithful, the students, especially hearing people buying tents, getting ready to go camp out for game day. And something you don't really see for Pitt a whole lot is people, getting ready to camp outside unless it's a big time game. And then you got game day coming as well. First time since a few years ago for the Thursday edition to open up the season, but really the first time in 22 years for a Saturday game. So this one's massive. And there's been some big games over the years, especially rivalry games with Penn State and West Virginia. But this one it feels different.
And this weekend, they get to take on, as Pat Narduzzi referred to, America's team. A lot of obviously Irish fans up that way, and I'm sure they'll make the trip to Pittsburgh the atmosphere inside the stadium for this one expected to be probably one of the best for Pitt as of late. Is this one that this is already a sellout and things like that up there?
Yeah, very close. I think there was a very limited amount of tickets left, but it'll be sold out. It'll be close to, I think Acrisure Stadium holds 68, but it'll push 70,000. So yeah, it'll be close. Pitt has set the Pittsburgh attendance record with the West Virginia game in 2022. This will be close. So
part of the reason why everybody's turning out to see Pitt take on Notre Dame is the play of Mason Heinschel. Since he's been inserted as the Pitt starting quarterback, they've taken off. That offense has been so much fun to watch. Putting up points, seeing him do it as a true freshman has been really cool to think about for this conference long term as well. What is the secret sauce behind him and why he's been able to have so much success?
I think the first thing is his confidence. He has a different level of confidence that you maybe don't see out of a young freshman, 18-year-old. And I think that starts with Cade Bell and Pat Narduzzi instilling that in him. I mean, the story has been told about he wasn't very highly recruited out of high school. Pitt was his only Power 4 offer. So I think the Pitt staff showing that sort of confidence in him to come in here. And even from the spring, when I had talked to Cade Bell, that he was really high on Heinschel and knew they had something in him. And so it was a surprise when they made the switch, but maybe not so just about the way the coaching staff was thinking about him and that he could potentially play. I mean, and Narduzzi had always talked about, hey, we're getting Heinschel ready to start a game just as we would with Holstein and Cole Gonzalez, the other backup as well. But Heinschel just has this confidence and this ability to lead and command this offense that's just different. It's on a different level. He's got a little bit of swagger to him as well. But just, in terms of the on-field ability, I mean, he's just so good at reading and finding his guys in the receiving game open, anticipating throws, and then he can make the big play when he needs to. He does a good job of giving or taking what's given to him, but then he puts the cherry on top where he can kind of make that big play where maybe Holstein didn't in big time moments. Holstein threw a couple interceptions at times against West Virginia and Louisville, but Heinschel hasn't really done that. A lot of his mistakes have come as the game's been pretty much wrapped up, but he's just done a good job of just doing all the little things right. And then another big aspect of his game is he can use his feet as well. That's a little underrated aspect of his game. He can run, he can take off. He had a big 36-yarder to open the Syracuse game that I think surprised and shocked a lot of people. So he just does a lot of little things right and just looks mature way beyond his age.
And Pitt putting up 30 points in 5 straight games since he's been the starting quarterback. What do you think about the matchup going into this one? Mason Heinschel, of course, coming in, but they're obviously hopeful to have Desmond Reed in this one. And Mason Heinschel just, among those named as a semifinalist for the Sean Alexander True Freshman of the Year award. So the accolades and recognition for him are stacking up ahead of this one too.
Yeah, this is without a doubt the biggest game he will start and has started in his football career just in general. I mean, this one's going to be massive. It's going to be a home game, but there will be enough Notre Dame fans to make it feel a little bit like a road game just with the amount of noise going on there. And Notre Dame's really good at forcing interceptions. They have 16 interceptions on the season. The secondary is really good. A lot of good coverage corners in their secondary safety unit, very good as well. So Heinschel just has to be smart. And that was a big thing that Narduzzi had talked about on Monday, just preaching, hey, you don't have to be the guy. You have to utilize your resources, the guys at your disposal, because that's what's made him successful. He hasn't really needed to play hero ball. He's been able to make the big plays at times when he's kind of had to, but he doesn't have to force things. And that's what he can't do that against Notre Dame, because if he starts doing that, he's going to get into trouble. And then the other thing about this matchup is Pitt offensively as a whole, and it starts a little bit with Heinschel, is they have to stay ahead of the sticks. They can't get backed up, can't be taking penalties. Heinschel has to be able to lead this team and then convert on third downs and fourth downs, those like money downs per se, that those teams love to use that cliche, but he's been very good at doing so. I believe they are 100% on fourth down since Heinschel has taken over as the starter. Against Florida State, the opening drive of the game, they went for it 3 times on fourth down. They did it within their own 30, and they were successful. Heinschel, they just have a ton of confidence giving him the ball, putting him in those situations, and he has executed at a high level. And that's, again, something we didn't see when they started off 2-2. Heinschel is just playing a little bit of a different gear, but you have to be able to make those reads, those plays, and and not force things too much against Notre Dame.
And he's able to do that with 3 running backs at his disposal. Jakirian Turner, again, hopeful for Desmond Reed, but Jakirian Turner being the leading rusher for Pitt, and then Jules Goff. Talented group. What do you think the kind of pecking order will be this Saturday in this big matchup?
Yeah, it's been interesting because when Reed has been healthy, we've seen a lot of Turner still sort of being the number one running back, carrying the ball on the ground. Reed's been more utilized in those passing situations. You saw he put up the 155 receiving yards against Florida State, named the ACC Receiver of the Week as a running back. So that's just what he's able to do. And the big thing I think against Notre Dame is Pitt has to utilize their speed and their quickness. And Turner has that. Reed has that. Joel's Goff is going to be their third guy in the running back rotations. He's a little bit bigger, but not by much. So he's a guy that could use in short yardage situations, trying to run up the middle between the tackles. But Turner, Reed, very effective on the outside. I think you could see a split usage between Reed and Turner just because the coaching staff loves Turner. And he's shown that, rightfully so, that he can play at this level. He's been, just as much as Heinzel's been a revelation, so has Turner in the running back room. He's been really good for Pitt, and he's just got this different gear and burst when he gets to the outside. So if Pitt can use their speed and quickness to get to the outside against Notre Dame, some of their bigger guys, they could be effective in that way.
Visiting with Nathan Breisinger of Pittsburgh Sports Now ahead of Pittsburgh taking on Notre Dame. You flip over to the defensive side of the ball. Pitt giving up around 21 points per game going into this one. Notre Dame coming off a very efficient performance from C.J. Carr. Obviously, they have Jeremiah Love. 2 of the key guys stopping Jeremiah Love this weekend, or hopeful to be slowing him down, will be Kyle Lewis and Rasheem Biles, 2 of the better linebackers in this league. Kyle Lewis was on my preseason ACC first team selection, so he's been playing at that level whenever he's been healthy, and they have a tall task this weekend against Notre Dame.
Yeah, they definitely do. And like you said, I expect both of them to play. Lewis, I think, he's going to be in there just about every snap. Biles may be a little bit limited. We'll see what goes on there. No injury report going into this game because it's a non-conference game. So we won't really know until game day specifically what's going on. But those 2 are critical, to get this defense going for Pitt. And Pitt has held up and held their own without them as well. Has had some guys step up and play really well, but Lewis and Biles, and then Braylon Lovelace in the middle there. Can't forget about him. That trio there has been really good. But the big thing about these 3 and Lewis and Biles specifically on the outside, they're very athletic, very fast. They're disruptors in the backfield. Biles a little bit more so than Lewis because Biles plays that boundary linebacker, so he comes in on the blitz a little bit more. Biles a little bit lengthier than Lewis, but he's just good, a very sound tackler, very solid tackler. Was the ACC leading tackler before he missed the Syracuse game and then has missed the past couple of games. So Pitt getting him back would be a huge boost and just help with the depth overall there so they can rotate in some guys. But Lewis, I mean, he's, as you mentioned, being an All-ACC preseason candidate. He was an All-American last year. Might not be putting up the stats as he did last year, but he's still playing at an elite level and just he's playing with such high IQ that, I mean, I think people don't even realize just how smart of a player he is as well. He's very good at reading opposing offenses. And the other thing with both Biles and Lewis that you got to take account for, they're very good coverage linebackers. They're very good in coverage. And Lewis came back from injury against Stanford 2 weeks ago and was in lockstep with the Stanford tight end, came up with an interception. And that could go Branson try to force in there, and just an excellent play all around. And I know Narduzzian mentioned that, NFL scouts might be looking at him to be a nickel type hybrid type player between safety linebacker. And that was the perfect example of the type of plays that he could make if he's slotted into that type of position. But Lewis and Biles, I mean, they're going to have to fly all over the field against Notre Dame, and they're going to have to really hone in on stopping the run. And talking with the defensive coordinator, Randy Bates, on Tuesday, he talked with the media that it really has to come down to gang tackling. You got to get that first guy in there and then bring that second guy. And Pitt's defense has been pretty good at doing that this year.
You bring up a great next segue there. I was going to talk to you about Randy Bates, him sounding off on Jeremiah Love and what they've got to do. You mentioned the gang tackling. Jeremiah Love, 988 yards on the ground this year, 13 touchdowns obviously one of the best, if not the best running back in the country. Pitt's front, their defensive line, is that unit, is that group good enough to maybe limit him enough that when they're at their best, when they're being able to be disruptive and get in the backfield? Is that something that you've seen enough of that you feel confident maybe this is a game where Jeremiah Love might get slowed down just enough to make CJ Carr go out and have to win this one?
Yeah, you put it perfectly where limit him just enough. And I think that's been the big key for Pitt, because they've shut down teams completely, whether it's NC State with Hollywood Smothers, besides a big 60-yard run. They completely limited him, and NC State had to throw it, and CJ Bailey just wasn't able to do it like you're expecting Carr needs to if they shut down Love. Pitt shut down the Syracuse run attack. But the big game you look at is the Florida State game. Florida State's so good at running the ball, big boys in the trenches up front. And Pitt, it was like, I think, 170 yards on the ground. So not the number they'd love it to be at, but they stopped the run enough. They forced a big critical fumble in that game as well. So that's the type of performance you need to see out of this D-line, and that's what they've been able to do. And I think they could step up to the challenge. They got a really solid defensive tackle room with about 4 guys that rotate in there with Sean Fitzsimmons, Francis Brew, who's a big guy, named to the Athletics freak list before the season, Nick James in there as well. And then Jasir Whittington's a young redshirt freshman who's been playing a lot more and more as the weeks have gone by, because they bumped one of their D tackles out to defensive end with some injuries, Isaiah Neal. Now the defensive ends are pretty healthy. So Neal, we'll see where he sort of slots. He might bounce inside and out as well this game. But Pitt, they love to stack the box. And with guys as healthy as they can be, you're going to see a little bit more rotation, D tackle, D end. So I think that could be very important playing into this game, as well as keeping them fresh in order to stop Love. And I think they have the capabilities to do it. Like I said, with just flocking to the football, they've done a really good job of that this year compared to maybe last year or even 2023 when they last played Notre Dame. They really struggled at bringing players down. And I know Love, for a bigger guy, he can be pretty slippery. So Pitt, that'll be huge and critical for them to stop Love.
I want to chat with you a little bit about this ACC championship race. And let's start with Pat Narduzzi's commentary. I thought this was just perfect. Coach Narduzzi, I think, encapsulated this entire race very well when talking about a must-win game and you got to go out and beat Notre Dame. And he says, well, we can, lose this one 103-10 or something as long as we win the next 2, which is that's a combination of coach speak. I got to imagine being like, look, at the end of the day, we got to take care of business these next 2 weeks, but let everybody else sleep on Pitt right now going into this, and let everybody think that the number 10 or 9 team in the country is going to come into Pittsburgh and just take care of business, and then the next 2 games are all that matters in this championship race.
Exactly. I think, a lot of people, went really in on those comments, taking it really far, which, I mean, I don't know if that's necessarily what you want to say if you're Narduzzi, saying, hey, right, you can put up 100 on us. We don't care as long as we win the next 2 games. Because, yes, this game still matters because, I mean, who knows if they win out, but somehow things don't fall their way and they don't go to the ACC championship, that committee's going to have a hard time maybe keeping them out, because you just look at the strength of schedule this last 3 games against top 20 opponents every single week. So this game is just as important, perhaps, as the last 2, but at the end of the day, Pitt's goal is to get to the ACC championship. So this one doesn't have that big of an influence on what their true objective and aspirations are for this team. It's always been ACC championship for this Pitt football team. And as big as this Notre Dame game is, with the national hype and just everything under the microscope, but their true focus and goal at the end of the day is going to be on those following 2 games. But I think you can't go out here and get blown out. Obviously not going to be what he said, but the years past where they've lost big to Notre Dame, I think you can't have that, because I think that could really hurt some momentum too for this team. If it's a 1-score game, great. I think Pitt, takes that as maybe a moral victory, even though you don't really want to have those. But if you get blown out, that could throw this team off the tracks a little bit, confidence-wise, morale-wise. So it's a tricky one for this game.
And not to bring it up because it was last year, it's a different starting quarterback, but when SMU beat Pitt last year, then all of a sudden the wheels came off. They had to have learned, obviously, some lessons from that. And you got to believe that if they were to lose this game against Notre Dame, that I think they can rebound. I mean, I'm really high on Mason Heichel, but, let's just assume they get past this one. This tees up so nicely for them to play spoiler for a Georgia Tech who's been talked about all year. Obviously, I guess, nail the final nail in the coffin of Miami's championship hopes. But this is a Pitt team that if they do win out, I hope the committee, obviously they'd be playing for an ACC championship most likely with all these crazy tiebreakers, but I would hope the committee would recognize they made a change at quarterback and they're a very different team than they were at the beginning of the year.
It's funny because that's been sort of my talking point a couple of times when regarding Pitt in the playoff, because think about 2023. When Jordan Travis went down, that was a big reason they kept Florida State out, because they didn't have their star quarterback. Now, Holstein had this team at 2-2, and since Heinzel's come in, it's been completely different. The offense is looking completely different. They're keeping the defense off the field a little bit more, which has allowed the defense to play better complementary football on the back end. And then you even look at those two losses that made them 2-2. Louisville's a top team, ranked team, and they've been looking solid. Now, obviously, they lost this past week, but still not a bad loss. You lost by a touchdown. And then you look at the West Virginia game. It's a rivalry game on the road. Yes, you were favored, but it's still one of those games that those type of things can happen where it goes either way. Went to overtime. Wasn't like it was a blowout. Wasn't like it was a 2-3 score game. You look at if that happens to Georgia or Alabama, Georgia's on the road at Alabama and they lose in overtime, they're going to say that's a great loss. So West Virginia is not that great, but that loss really shouldn't look as bad as I think a lot of people may think it is. But yeah, I think the big thing is you made the change and you found success, and they're beating teams up that they should beat. They're pulling away from teams they should, and they're just playing much better football. And if, I know you look overall at the entire schedule, but there's a little bit more recency bias in the way Pitt has played as of late. Obviously, that should help them, if they find a way to win out. But, there's still a discussion to be made from the committee on who to put in. I mean, Pitt, they'll have a fighting chance.
And look, we'll be tracking it all on Pittsburgh Sports Now with our friend Nathan Breisinger. Thanks so much for the time on a huge week for you. I know how these weeks are when it's a big game, and we appreciate the time previewing this one with us on All Access AM. Thanks so much, Nathan.
Appreciate it, Billy. Thanks for having me.
All right, there he goes, Nathan Breisinger, spending some time with us on All Access AM. We really appreciate his time, and we appreciate you guys listening to All Access AM this morning. We'll catch you next time. Please hit that subscribe, follow, and like button. And we'll catch you on Thursday, getting our final bits and pieces of previewing a huge week in the ACC out there for you guys. So thanks for listening, and we'll catch you guys next.
Sportsmo lets you make a more direct impact on the game because it lets you, the fans, fund your favorite college football teams in a straightforward way. In a you win and I'll give way. In a I need you to show me your running game is alive and then I'll donate way. These real-time tax-deductible microfunds lead to impact your team can feel. Every cent you send mixes with every drop of sweat they put in. Form your squad. Boost your friends when a play comes through. A new way to follow the game. And cha-ching, your favorite team. So what do you say, difference makers? Ready to power the play? Sportsmo. Download today. Let's smo.